Dreamland Margate, the 1960s, the place to be. So this is Dreamland as I remember it. It used a few photographs, quite a few photographs, maps and bits and pieces like that, just to try and get it as near into perspective as it was. The only thing that's remaining now is the Scenic Railway. So we're going to start right outside the park at the Eaton Road Entrance. This is roughly how it was sort of look back then. You can see the sky wheels over the back there and the little tower from the buffet. So inside, one of the first things that you come to is a little miniature railway. That was Billy. This isn't actually what the rail, this is more an American railway. This is the nearest I could actually find to put here in this particular space, but nevertheless this is actually counting as the little miniature railway at the moment. It was green, that was its colours. It eventually turned to an apple green, which is the apple green that you see here, but it was a darker green at one time. Anybody remember the Rock and Roll House or the Topsy Turvy House? This is one that worked on a pivot and just literally went round and round. The whole of the ride surrounding you turned upside down. There's a great effect. And here's the dive bomber. Yes, there was a dive bomber, not too dissimilar to this, back in the 1960s in roughly the same sort of place. The whirler boats. That was an idea very similar to the Dodgems, except it was on water, and you did have sort of like a grid above it. There's a look at the Scenic Railway, still there today. It's the only ride I think that's in the park that is still there today. Anybody remember the Alice in Wonderland Ride? And it went underneath the, what I would call the fireworks or the grandstand seating in the car park there. And it looked pretty similar to that. It was in this particular position just opposite the Scenic Railway there. Now here's one of the iconic rides of Dreamland during the 1950s and 60s, the double wheel or the sky wheels, to give it its correct name. Unfortunately this ride doesn't work because I had to build this one from scratch, so it was put there just simply to make it look like it was Dreamland back in the 1960s. I've done this with a few bits and pieces then. I'm kind of sort of semi-proud of it. It took a little while to put it together and work it out how to get it there. As you come into the park, you'd see it all, virtually everywhere that you are within the park itself. The Paratroopers, anybody remember the Paratroopers? They still have them about now today. Now, I remember going on this one and feeling a little bit uneasy at times, but it wasn't too bad. And another iconic ride of Dreamland itself. You found this in all the amusement parks around the world at the time and during this period. It's the Caterpillar. It's like a sort of a roller coaster that goes in circles and then a hood comes over the top and gives you an entirely different experience. Notice the fencing and the lighting has a colour scheme of red and white. That was something back in its day of Dreamland. There was a lot, everything was red and white. Also notice the stalls as well, the red and white stalls. There were quite a lot of them, all uniformed around the park. Back to the Rock and Roll Topsy Turvy House there and an overlook of the park. Another look at the dive bomber there. And an overview look of the park with the tower from the buffet restaurant. Anybody remember that one as well? This was all on the top area. Over the back there's where they now have some flats, so unfortunately you can't build on that particular area now. And the ghost train there, that had various different levels. Didn't go too high, but you didn't actually know you were going down. The river caves, famous river caves of Dreamland with the tubs, stretched out, went for about half a mile and went underneath the roller coaster at the back. The roller coaster, that's something else that isn't there any longer. Another view of the river caves there and the windmill on the top as well. This was just before they made the outside look like it was actually caves, so they had like a little pitched roof building just outside. So this is the roller coaster, or the racing coaster as they called it at the time. I think they changed it to the roller coaster later on. And it does, as opposed to the Scenic Railway, is much smaller, but it does operate quite differently in as much as it does work more like a roller coaster because they don't have a brake man on there. So once you start on there, once it drops, that's it, you're on your way. And there's no brake man to slow it down at any points in time. And it's another wooden roller coaster as well, as they used to be in the day. So you'd actually be going over the top of the river caves, which twirled around, and as I said, if it was stretched out, it came to something like about half a mile. A lot of people don't remember this particular ride, but if you check all your old postcards or photographs on the internet, you'll see that it does indeed actually exist. we can compare this to the Scenic Railway, which is much larger and also had a brakeman as well. You see over the back there we have a cruise ship. They're supposed to be the Queen Mary. I did put something that looked like the Queen Mary, but found a I've sort of mismatched something which was a template from something else that I managed to place over my boat. It's got longer funnels on it, but I just thought it looked great. It looked pretty much like that. And also notice what we call the firework, what I used to call the firework seating. People used to go there, or Grandstand, or anything else. They did have an It's a Knockout as well for 1 or 2 years running. But about, was it 9 at dusk on a Thursday night during the summer periods, or from August till September, used to have the fireworks. Once again, taking a look at the lighting, red and white colour scheme, and the fencing as well to match, which it did all around the park as well. That was the Dreamland colours, red and white. So we're going to take a quick peek in during the daytime inside the Magic Gardens, or the Garden of Light, which comes into its own at night time. When the sun goes down, this place comes alive, so we're going to have a look at this a little bit later on. So the sun's starting to go down now, it's starting to set, and this is the light that will be reflecting onto Dreamland, and of course we start coming up to proper sunset now. This was a great time of the day. I love this particular time of the day coming into the park, because you had all of the evening, all the lights coming into their own, what they call the golden hour. And here we go, we transformed into night now, and this is a view that you'll get coming into the Eaton Road Entrance, but at night, with the boat behind, the sky wheels, the Dodgems. The miniature railway, which looked wonderful with all the lighting on it at night. And the little bridge that it passed through before it went round all the back of everything and ended up coming into the Magic Gardens eventually. The buffet building and that sort of obelisk tower that was there in the past, the Topsy Turvy House, rotated around from the outside, and when you went in the inside it was exactly the same as the haunted swing in Blackpool, except you actually got to see the outside of a building as well. It's a beautiful overview. If we had a drone at the time, that's exactly how it would look. Well, almost exactly how it would look. I do so remember the dive bomber. I remember the sounds it used to make as well. It's an interesting ride. They do still have a few of them about, but it's something that was around in the early part of the 60s. By the end of the 60s, this had been removed. Probably because you couldn't get too many people on in one go. Now there's a postcard that doesn't look too dissimilar to this view, with the Sky was the ghost train there, the other big wheel there, the Helter Skelter, the Whirler boats underneath the Dodgems, the Scenic to the right, then the Sphinx right over the back there, and of course the river caves that you can just see behind there. That's a wonderful night view. You'd get something very similar to that standing at a point and a position of this. Anybody that remembers the 60s, the 1960s, will remember something very similar to that. And the ghost train as well. It was next to the Helter Skelter. It was in front of the racing or roller coaster there. It also interlocked with the Scenic Railway. So everything interlocked around the area, which was space saving. And you had some large rides as well. Nighttime view from the back of the roller coaster. So if we had drones back then, that's exactly what we'd see. And then right over the background is the Queen Mary. There's another look at the Sphinx over the back there. Another walk. It was a walk round attraction. They had a lot of walk round attractions at one time. A few dark rides. At this particular position they had one of the smaller big wheels, so I guess you'd probably get a view very similar to this. Right, hovering just above the Eaton Road Entrance area. A great look at the Queen. It's not the Queen Mary, I know it's not. It is a cruise ship. The Queen Mary had smaller funnels on it, but this just looked pretty good. I came across a template and sort of half mixed it in with my own ideas. They had gaps that went through out to the other side onto the Firework Grandstand Seating Area, and also there were shops underneath there. There were stalls, there were coconut shy, there was arcades, you know, firing ranges, bingo, everything underneath there. Also, one of the funnels was a lookout point for the Dreamland people that can actually watch and keep an eye on what was happening around the park. People used to write things onto boards so that they could actually see how many people were on the ride. And I remember if they gave a free ride, which they could do, they could choose to give free ride to people. They always had to put +2 or +1 or +3 how many people were having a free ride, so they could actually see from that, from the funnel, which was, it had windows in it, so I think all of them had windows in them. So they were all actually used as some sort of office or lookout or whatever. Another look at the Alice in Wonderland ride, which looked pretty much like this. I'm sure a lot of people during that time will remember. That's the view you get just as you come out from underneath the Scenic Railway and looking up the hill. Notice the go-karts on the left there as well. And right over the back there is the Garden of Light, or the Magic Gardens, which came into its own obviously at night time, and they made a charge. Speaking of charges, also on Thursday evenings during the firework season, they used to make a charge at the gates from 6 p.m. onwards. So anybody in the park before then would not be charged, but anybody that came into the park after 6 p.m. would have to buy a ticket at any of the gates as they came in. So there's the grandstand seating as it would have looked at the time, whether watching the fireworks show or even It's a Knockout. Back in the 1970s they brought It's a Knockout into there, and they used to have that every week just before the fireworks. So you got your money's worth then. And here we go, this is the Magic Gardens. It was obviously filled with light and colour and displays. Lights that I'm pretty certain were probably, some of them were some of the ex-Blackpool illuminations, and then repainted and put into the park. The bridges, I remember the bridges, I do so remember the bridges. But I do remember all the different displays and the fountains. This is where you find most of the rides today in Dreamland, but at that particular time it was the Magic Gardens, eventually turning into what they call the Safari Park. It was actually a zoo, but then eventually they started putting rides into there, but it completely changed the face of it. So what seemed like a good idea, and they made good use of space back then. They really made good use of space, that's all I can say. And of course this was all behind the Scenic Railway area. Well, now that would be a look where you would have the stage area, and that round circular piece of AstroTurf will be set there now. Lots of little statues and things like that strategically placed around. It's like a little park within itself. It's lovely, it really was. Very magical at night. And there is indeed a seafront entrance there with the famous cinema building that you see. Anybody visiting Margate will see this. So there we go, Dreamland as it was in a roundabout sort of way back in the 1960s, in colour, 4K as well. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this virtual tour of a place that's no longer the same as this anymore. It's there, but it's not. Please do subscribe to my channel so you'll be up to date with all my latest uploads. Also check on my past creations and uploads. See you all again very soon on YouTube. Cheers. Thank you very much.